The German philosopher Immanuel Kant remarked that one reason why he believed in the existence of God was the moral law within, the sense within all of us of a moral right and wrong. I believe that the moral law also provides us with evidence that there is a meaning to life. Do you see that tiny dot? That's the Earth, taken by the Voyager 1 space probe from a distance of over 6 billion kilometers away. And the late Carl Sagan would famously refer to it as a pale blue dot. When looking at that image, Sagan urged us to consider all of the human folly that has occurred throughout history on that tiny dot. All the wars that have been fought so that one nation or empire could claim a tiny slice of it for themselves. Sagan truly believed that image of the pale blue dot should inspire and motivate us all to be kind to one another and to cherish our planet. Now, while of course there is much we can admire about Carl Sagan's life, it was his moral conclusion, though, which he drew from that image, which is interesting. His underlying assumption as an atheist, that somehow that tiny dot should invoke goodwill and kindness towards one another. Because if, as he believed, there is no divine moral lawgiver, then another person could look at that same image, look at that same insignificant dot and draw a radically different conclusion from his. For what another person could just as easily conclude is that if there is no afterlife, if our time between the two brief horizons of birth and death are all that we'll ever experience, all that we'll ever know, then why be concerned about others elsewhere on that dot? If this life is all that there is, then you better grab what you can. And if that involves taking things away from others somewhere else on that dot, if it means others will suffer because of your actions, well, sucks to be them. Now, while most of us would condemn such a person, could we really though? Because without a moral law to refer back to, can we truly say anything is really right or wrong? Now, some argue that such a person would be wrong because it's simply in all of our best interests to get along and cooperate on this small dot that we all occupy. And yet, if nature is all there is, then this runs completely against all the empirical evidence of how nature operates. The entire ethos of nature is to feed, breed, and to use whatever means to succeed. Every living organism on this planet is at the ready to kill each other in order to survive. Every living organism is carving out its own tiny sliver on this dot. And if we are merely just another living organism, who's to say that we shouldn't be doing likewise? Nature unequivocally favors the strong over the weak, the sinner over the saints, the Hitlers over the Mother Teresas of this world. Kumbaya just isn't in nature's repertoire. The moral law completely violates the laws of nature. So where has it come from? Well, there's two basic possibilities. In the late 19th century, the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche would utter the famous phrase, "God is dead." Like the belief in God, he believed that the moral law was a mistaken creation of the human mind, which was only used to shield the weak from the strong. And several decades later, one of Nietzsche's greatest admirers would be Adolf Hitler, who, setting out to conquer our tiny dot and create a master race, ordered the German army to suppress any sense of pity or compassion as they exterminated millions of so-called inferior peoples. Now, the second possibility is that the moral law comes from outside of nature, that it comes from God, that we are different from the rest of nature, that we are separate from the beasts, and God expects us to live accordingly. So, what does any of this have to do with the meaning of life? Well, everything. Because in a purposeless universe, without God and a divine moral law, it wouldn't matter whether we were kind to one another or cruel. But in a universe created for a purpose, by a God who has given us moral laws to live by, how we treated one another, especially those who are the least among us, would be of the utmost importance. Does religious hypocrisy mean that religion is wrong? That will be the subject of our next video. And to make sure you don't miss that video or any other Segue to Reason videos, please click on the subscribe button. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Appreciate your support. And as always, keep searching.